Hi, I'm John Maxwell. When the top companies in the world are looking for trainers, speakers, and coaches, there's one name that stands above the rest, and that's Maxwell Leadership. Our certified team members have gotten proven results for companies all over the globe, and our reputation, I'm proud to say, is second to none. Some of our members have risen to the top of their profession, including the one you're going to meet today. I proudly introduce you to my friend Bob Fabian Zinka.
Welcome to the Leadership and Success Podcast with your host, Coach BZ, where we help you lead with purpose and succeed with impact. If you're ready to grow into the kind of leader others want to follow, this podcast is for you. If you're determined to elevate your success and leave a lasting legacy, this podcast is for you. As my mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell reminds us, everything rises and falls on leadership. Our goal is simple: to inspire you, challenge you, and equip you with insights that can transform the trajectory of your leadership journey. Welcome aboard to another episode of the Leadership and Success Podcast with Coach BZ.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership and Success Podcast. Thank you so much for being with us today. And before we get started, I'm reminded, let's do our moment of gratitude. So this is where it takes less than a minute. We just want to take a moment to be thankful for something, which we are thankful for something every time that we meet on this podcast. So maybe close your eyes, put yourself in your happy place. For me, it's probably by the beach, and you can see the waves of the ocean and the sun, and it's just perfect. And now take a deep breath and think about one thing you are grateful for right now. Today, I am really grateful for the holiday season. Christmas is one of my favorite holidays. After 21 years in the U.S. Navy, I have missed so many holidays with my family, and I am so glad I'm going to be spending Christmas with my wife and my two daughters. So it's I am really grateful to be here and to spend time with family. So let us know what you are grateful for. Type it in the comment, and also let us know where you are watching us from, what city, what state. And if you have a question for me, please type it in the comment as well. Today, we are going to have a podcast that is going to be related to an article I wrote about the leadership lessons I learned from the one and only General Colin Powell. So I first met General Powell, I think it was in 2015, during his book signing for his second instant best-selling book, It Worked For Me. He's really a great man. I miss him a lot, but I'm glad that I have his books, and he can still mentor me about life and leadership and inspire me by his story even long after he has gone. So I encourage you to read the article, Leadership Lesson from General Colin Powell, from the Navy to Silicon Valley. And today's podcast is going to be all about that. It's going to last about 30 minutes or so. So if you have any question again, let me know. Type it in the comment, and I'll be back in about 30 minutes. Here we go.
Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take those high-value sources, the articles, the research, sometimes the decades of hard-won wisdom, and we distill it all down.
Right down to the critical, actionable intelligence you need.
We're here to give you that shortcut, not just to knowledge, but to real, practical leadership wisdom.
And today, we are embarking on a deep dive into what might be one of the most comprehensive domain-agnostic leadership playbooks of the modern era.
That's a big claim.
Yeah.
So what's our source material?
It's a really profound reflection by current U.S. Navy Information Warfare Commander, who's also a cybersecurity executive. So he's got a foot in both worlds.
Military and Silicon Valley.
Exactly. And he's analyzed the enduring philosophy of General Colin Powell. I mean, a figure whose influence stretched across 4 decades, from Vietnam all the way to the highest levels of government. And he applies those lessons directly to the trenches of military command and, the boardrooms of Silicon Valley.
Okay, so let's unpack this with a clear mission statement. We're not here for a simple history lesson.
Not at all.
Our goal is to really extract Powell's core principles. I'm thinking especially of his famous 13 rules. And we want to determine exactly how they provide this robust kind of plug-and-play framework.
Right, a framework for anyone leading high-performance teams or, anyone who's suddenly facing a high-stakes crisis.
And that could be anything, right? A network breach, a product launch that just completely fails, or even a really complex corporate reorganization. And just trying to maintain your integrity through all of that.
And that's the hook for you, the learner. It's so relevant. You might be asking, why should I, a technologist or an executive in a fast-moving civilian field, care about the wisdom of a retired four-star general?
It's a fair question.
It is. But Powell's genius was that he boiled leadership down to its essential human components. His focus was entirely on building trust, fostering competence, and enabling clear, decisive action.
Principles that don't care what industry you're in?
They are truly domain agnostic. When the pressure is on, human psychology takes over. His playbook is a fast track to being a well-informed, a highly effective, and just a fundamentally decent leader.
So let's begin with section 1. We need to establish the core philosophy here, this idea of leading with people and trust. And, it's essential to recognize the sheer scale of the leader we are discussing.
Absolutely. We're talking about a U.S. Army retired four-star general. He was the former and the first African-American chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and then Secretary of State.
So he held massive institutional power. But his core tenet, his central belief, was startlingly simple.
It really was. For all the complexity of, commanding global forces, the foundational principle he always emphasized was that leadership is intrinsically human-centric.
All about people.
The source repeatedly notes Powell's insistence that leadership is all about people, motivating people to get the job done. He recognized that strategy, technology, budgets, they're all just tools. The people. The people are the actual force.
That makes so much sense. In any modern organization, especially in tech, we can get obsessed with the elegance of the plan or the sophistication of the algorithm.
Right.
But if that human element, the team executing the code review, the engineers on call, the product designers, if they aren't motivated or inspired or properly equipped, the most brilliant strategy in the world just fails during execution.
Precisely. Powell's incredible success, especially orchestrating these huge, large-scale operations like the Gulf War, it hinged not on some elaborate plan written in an isolated office.
But on the people on the ground.
Exactly. On the people who actually executed those plans. He believed the ultimate goal was to earn the team's trust, because once you have that genuine bond, they will, and this is his quote, accomplish missions beyond your wildest expectations.
The source highlighted a brilliant summary of his philosophy. Leadership is the art of getting more out of a group of people than anyone ever predicted you'd be able to. I love that.
It reframes the whole job, doesn't it?
It really does. It isn't about control or command in the traditional sense. It's about serving as a multiplier of human potential. You're helping people achieve things they didn't even know they were capable of.
And this brings us to a hallmark of Powell's style that often surprises people who only focus on the military stereotype. And that's his profound emphasis on kindness.
Kindness.
Yes. The source makes this fascinating case that Powell explicitly demonstrated that a leader can be intensely professional and profoundly kind simultaneously. And that duality, it often feels impossible in high-pressure, high-stakes environments where, being callous can sometimes masquerade as competence.
I think that's a critical distinction to draw because
Yes.
people often mix up toughness with being cold, or they think kindness means you're a pushover.
Right.
So if you're kind in the business world, especially in a really competitive space, doesn't that make you vulnerable? Doesn't it sort of dilute the urgency you need to set high standards?
Powell would argue the complete opposite. He explicitly taught that kindness is not a weakness. It's a profound strategic strength that builds fierce long-term loyalty and, reduces all that unnecessary friction.
So you can still be tough.
Oh, absolutely. He was crystal clear that you must be tough and set exceptionally high standards. There is no place for mediocrity when the mission really matters.
But the way you enforce those standards,
Yeah.
that's the key.
That's everything. He taught that demanding excellence in a spirit of kindness can build a very powerful team on the basis of trust. He recognized that yelling or belittling a subordinate might get you immediate compliance.
Sure, in the moment.
But it fundamentally destroys the trust and the initiative you need for them to go above and beyond the next time. If a team trusts you to be fair, even when you deliver hard truths, they will follow you anywhere.
So things like humility and empathy, treating the junior aide, or the parking attendant, or the first day intern with the same palpable respect you'd give the CEO. These aren't just, like, nice ethical layers.
No, they are core tactical leadership skills. They shaped his entire operating style. They were the foundation that allowed him to demand excellence without sacrificing the team's spirit or its willingness to, run toward danger.
And that authenticity, as the source points out, is what makes his whole philosophy work. He built the leadership environment he himself wanted to be in.
Exactly. And it sets the perfect stage for the 13 rules because every single one of those rules is rooted in that core equation. You take care of your people, and they will take care of the mission.
Okay, let's transition now. Section 2, the deep dive into those famous 13 rules of leadership. These were principles he gathered over a lifetime of complex assignments. He shared them in Parade magazine way back in 1989, and he famously kept them on his desk.
Like a constant daily checklist.
Exactly, and we've reorganized them by theme to better illustrate how they connect. Let's start with the biggest idea: mindset, resilience, and optimism, what the source correctly identifies as the force multipliers.
We begin with Rule 1, and it's a great one. It ain't as bad as you think. It will look better in the morning. This is so much more than a platitude. It's a non-negotiable directive for the leader to control the emotional atmosphere of the entire organization.
Oh, I've seen this play out in crisis situations. When a major incident hits, a system failure, a catastrophic data loss, the first instinct for a lot of people on the ground is just to panic or freeze.
Total despair.
Right, and if the leader validates that despair, the organization just descends into chaos. Powell's insisting the leader has to immediately project positivity. You become the emotional anchor that encourages the team to pivot from, analyzing the catastrophe to generating solutions.
That is the function of the rule. It's emotional leadership.
Yeah.
And the source emphasizes that Powell was deeply aware this is an attitude to project, not necessarily a blind prediction.
It wasn't naive.
No, he would often quip, it's not a prediction, it might be worse, but it's an attitude to have. But that attitude is what inspires perseverance. Think of American leaders throughout history after calamitous events like Roosevelt after Pearl Harbor. The immediate message isn't about the pain, but about the capacity to overcome it.
Which gives you the momentum you need to adopt Rule 4. It can be done.
Yes.
This is the ultimate mindset reset. It establishes this core principle of possibility. The source author mentioned he hated phrases like, "we can't," or "that's impossible" in his command structure.
Because those phrases just shut down ingenuity before the work even starts. It's an intellectual refusal to accept negative inertia.
So you have to start from a place of how.
Exactly. Powell insisted that leaders and their teams must start by believing a solution exists. And you only accept impossibility when the facts and rigorous analysis definitively prove its folly. So in the context of, say, a modern cybersecurity team facing some unprecedented zero-day vulnerability, the initial discussion can't be, we can't patch this in time. It has to be, how can we patch this in time and what resources do we need to make it happen? That shift just unleashes creativity.
And if Rules 1 and 4 are the building blocks of this mindset, then Rule 13 brings it all together as a comprehensive strategy. Perpetual optimism is a force multiplier.
And this is where we need to spend a little time on that tactical term, a force multiplier. It's anything that enhances the combat power or mission capability of a unit, right? It lets a small unit achieve results that far exceed its actual numbers.
So he's saying optimism does that.
He argued that optimism functions exactly this way. A team imbued with genuine, contagious confidence will dramatically outperform a pessimistic one, even if the pessimistic team has, marginally superior raw talent.
Okay, but I have to challenge this a little bit. In high-risk, detail-oriented fields like cybersecurity or finance, isn't perpetual optimism kind of dangerous? Doesn't it risk blinding you to very real threats?
Turning into toxic positivity.
Yeah, or just reckless self-confidence.
That's an essential clarification. And Powell guarded against that. His optimism was never passive. It was action-oriented, and it was built on preparation. It's the difference between saying, I hope this vulnerability goes away.
Which is toxic optimism.
Right, and saying, we have the grit, the talent, and the established processes to handle this vulnerability, even if the odds look bad. That's perpetual optimism. It's confidence in the capability of the team, not just confidence in fate.
I see. So it's a mechanism for resilience, not a prediction that things will be easy. The source shares an anecdote about Powell speaking to a room full of cybersecurity pros who were just struggling.
Yes. The mood was demoralized, anxious. But Powell's presence, his message of hope, and his genuine belief that their work mattered, it literally lifted the entire crowd. He instilled hope and a can-do spirit just by projecting that resolute confidence.
The psychological cost of anxiety is reduced capacity.
Exactly. If you believe you can make things better, that confidence enhances your ability to actually prevail, making optimism a critical leadership resource.
Let's move to our next theme. Theme B, emotional discipline and ego management. So, if optimism stabilizes the team, this section really addresses the biggest destabilizing factor, the leader's own emotional volatility. We start with Rule 2. Get mad, then get over it.
This acknowledges the human reality of leadership. In high-stakes environments, you will feel anger, you'll feel frustration, disappointment. It's inevitable.
But the directive is absolute.
Absolutely. Those emotions cannot be allowed to fester, to linger, or most critically, to drive your subsequent decisions. You acknowledge the feeling, you find a healthy, rapid release valve, and then you regain control.
The source highlighted a great example from Powell's life. He talked about being livid when the French foreign minister opposed the U.S. on live TV in 2003 regarding Iraq.
Oh, yeah. The natural human response would be to carry that grudge, right? To cut off communication.
For sure.
But he cooled off. He exercised emotional discipline because he knew that later on, U.S. interests would require him to work collaboratively with that very minister. A lingering grudge is strategically costly. It destroys your future options.
The analogy they used was perfect. Kick the trash can if you need to, then pick it up and get back to work.
That's it. The emotional release has to be momentary, not permanent.
And that transition to objective professionalism is essential. Which leads us to what I think is maybe the most challenging rule for any high-achieving professional. Rule 3. Avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it.
This is the rule of humility and self-awareness, and the source author's reflection on this one. It offers some profound psychological depth. He shares his own painful experience facing medical retirement from the Navy. It wasn't his choice.
So the military role was stripped away.
And he realized just how deeply his identity, his entire self-worth, had become intertwined with his position as a commander.
The source details the emotional void he experienced, this feeling that the Navy took a piece of him when they took away the uniform and the title. That must have been devastating.
It forces a confrontation with your personal identity. He learned that when circumstances, a job loss, a medical crisis, a reorg, when they strip away the role, the inherent leader within you must still be strong enough to stand. Your position is temporary, your character is not.
That's a powerful lesson for anyone whose professional life is defined by their C-suite title or their tenure. This is a painful but necessary truth. Your title is not your worth.
And this also shows up in how a leader accepts dissent. Powell actively encouraged his teams to challenge him, even forcefully. He would say, disagree with me, do it with feeling, don't be intimidated when I argue back. And once the decision is made, execute it as if it were your idea.
That kind of openness is proof of supreme ego management.
It is. It ensures the mission is served by the best possible strategy, not just the leader's favorite strategy. He valued truth over pride. And if we combine that humility with external composure, we arrive at Rule 10, remain calm, be kind.
This one emphasizes leading with grace in chaos. In a world defined by volatility, and few things are more volatile than a major incident or conflict, panic is the ultimate operational security vulnerability.
Absolutely. Panic is contagious, but so is calm confidence. The leader's primary job in a crisis is to serve as a steady-state system. If the leader is running around hysterically, the team will mirror that dysfunction and mistakes will just multiply.
By remaining calm, you anchor the team. You signal that the situation, however dire, is manageable.
And that calm must be coupled with civility, the kindness component. That example of Powell treating the White House janitor with the same respect as the president isn't just a nice story. It's a calculated organizational strategy.
How so?
It reflects the minister's advice Powell treasured. Always display more kindness than seems necessary. Why? Because the janitor, the facilities manager, or that external vendor might hold a critical piece of information. Or, more importantly, they might be the person you desperately need to motivate to help you during a crisis.
So your past kindness becomes the currency of their motivation.
Exactly. You can be firm and fair while maintaining absolute composure and respect for everyone in the hierarchy.
All right, let's move to Theme C, which focuses on decision speed and ownership. This is about the critical mechanics of effective leadership, especially under time pressure. And Rule 6 is fascinating and often misquoted. Don't let adverse facts stand in the way of a good decision.
This rule is specifically designed to combat analysis paralysis. Powell knew that in high-stakes environments, whether it's kinetic warfare or a rapid market shift, you will never, ever have 100% of the information.
Adverse facts, doubts, unknowns, they'll always be there.
Always. So he's not saying ignore reality. He's saying don't let uncertainty become an excuse for inaction.
The historical parallel he often cited was General Eisenhower's decision to launch D-Day.
Right. The weather was awful, forecasts were uncertain, the facts were adverse. But Eisenhower trusted his informed instinct, he gave the go order, and was successful. And crucially, as the source points out, Eisenhower had a letter drafted accepting full blame if the operation failed.
That willingness to own the outcome is what frees the leader to act.
And this leads us to the critical concept that is just gold for technical leaders. The P40/70 rule. This is the metric for decision-making speed. You must use your informed judgment once you have between 40% and 70% of the necessary information.
This rule is so essential for incident response, especially in cybersecurity. Let's really dissect this range for our listeners.
Okay, so less than 40% of the data. Let's say you only have a single alert and no forensic context. That means you are gambling blind. You lack the foundational context to make a good decision.
But the upper limit, 70%, is just as important. Waiting for more than 70% certainty is usually too late. Why is that final 30% so costly in a crisis?
Because the time spent gathering that last 30% of marginal data often outweighs the benefit of slightly increased certainty. Think about a scenario where your mean time to respond, your MTTR SLA, is 60 minutes for a critical security incident. If you spend 50 of those minutes getting from 60% data to 85% data, you may have missed the window to contain the breach, even though you made a theoretically better decision. The time cost is higher than the knowledge gain.
So you have to decide.
You must decide. Execute forcefully based on your current intelligence, that 40/70 zone, and be prepared to adjust on the fly as new information comes in.
That clarity is fantastic. But before you get to that decisive action, you have to look ahead and consider the consequences. Which brings us to Rule 5. Be careful what you choose. You may get it.
This speaks to the requirement for deep homework and strategic foresight. Every decision a leader makes has second-order effects. The choices are lasting.
You have to look beyond the immediate win.
Exactly. Powell cautioned leaders to do that. For example, implementing a radical new cloud architecture might solve your scaling problem. That's the immediate win. But it instantly creates 10 new regulatory compliance burdens, complex billing overhead, and unforeseen dependencies on third-party vendors. Those are the second-order effects.
So it requires long-term thinking. A successful choice often brings a new, harder set of challenges that you have to be prepared to manage.
Precisely. And that management comes down to ownership. Rule 7. You can't make someone else's decisions. You shouldn't let someone else make yours.
This champions ownership and accountability across the board. In a healthy organization, good leaders delegate authority. They empower their teams to make decisions in their own lanes.
But at the executive level, the leader has to take responsibility for the ultimate strategic calls.
Powell's famous deliberation over running for president illustrates this perfectly. After weeks of intense pressure and consideration, he decided against it.
And why? Because he realized, I did not wake up a single morning wanting to be president. He listened to his own internal compass, and he owned that deeply personal, monumental choice. He refused to let the demands and expectations of others push him into a role that just wasn't right for him.
So it's a directive to honor your own integrity, own your choices, and be prepared to live with them, while at the same time guiding others but letting them steer their own ship.
And that fosters their growth and accountability. It creates a pipeline of future decision makers.
Let's turn now to themed execution and team focus. These are the rules that govern day-to-day excellence and mission success, starting with Rule 8. Check small things.
This rule embodies attention to detail, which Powell knew was the hinge upon which large, complex operations often swing. But, and this is important, it is not an endorsement of micromanagement.
That's a critical distinction.
It is. It is about using small details as critical indicators of the health and discipline of the organization.
Okay, I want to push back on that a little. In a technical organization where individual autonomy is so valued, doesn't the leader checking small things quickly degrade into micromanagement? And doesn't that destroy the trust we just spent 3 sections building?
That's the critical difference. Powell was not fixated on how a person was accomplishing a small task, but on the result of that task as a signal. The source mentions him checking barracks, cleanliness, and latrines.
Right.
He wasn't focused on toilet bowls. He was using the condition of the physical environment to gauge the troops' overall discipline, their morale, and their adherence to standard operating procedures. If the small things are sloppy, the big things will be too.
So the application in a tech context isn't about reviewing every single line of code personally.
Yeah, God no.
It's about checking the rigor of the process.
Precisely. It's the ensuring excellence in the mundane. Are the mandatory security patches being applied immediately? Is this standard code review process being followed rigorously? Or are people cutting corners? Are those basic, repetitive on-call duties, the latrines of the tech world, are they being handled with excellence?
A major operational failure, be it an outage or a breach, almost always traces back to a breakdown in one of those small, routine processes.
Almost always. Which brings us to the cornerstone of morale and retention. Rule 9. Share credit.
This one feels fundamental.
It is. Powell noted that people need recognition and a sense of worth as much as they need food and water. When people pour their hearts, their time, their ingenuity into a mission, they have to feel seen and valued.
He modeled this constantly, always deflecting praise to the troops or his staff, even after historic victories.
And the leader's role, according to this rule, is perfectly defined. Stand in front of the team when there's blame, and stand physically behind the team when there's praise.
That single commitment to serve as the organization's heat shield during failure and its loudest cheerleader during success, that builds an undeniable culture of appreciation and reciprocal trust.
And that trust enables the next rule, which is incredibly demanding. Rule 11, have a vision, be demanding.
Vision is easy to talk about, but effective demanding is hard. Leaders have to articulate a clear, inspiring vision that gives meaning to the team's toil. People crave purpose. What does that mean practically in a modern command?
This is where we need to introduce the concept of commander's intent. In the military, this isn't just some fluffy mission statement. It defines the purpose of the operation, the key tasks to accomplish, and the desired end state.
But it deliberately leaves the how to the subordinate leaders.
Exactly. So a business analogy might be, commander's intent is not dictating you must use Python and Kubernetes to build the new data platform. It is stating the purpose is to create a resilient, low-latency data architecture that can handle triple the current user load without increasing MTTR beyond 10 minutes, so that the organization can launch its new AI product line by Q4.
That is a perfect translation. It sets the destination and the non-negotiable standards, but it empowers decentralized, agile action.
And Powell combined that high-level vision with high standards. He was demanding. If the vision is clear and inspiring, like his goal to transform the State Department into a more responsive, well-supported institution, you can demand excellence in execution because everyone knows exactly what they're striving for and why that excellence is essential.
Finally, we wrap up the 13 rules with the rule that requires the most profound internal resolve. Rule 12. Don't take counsel of your fears or naysayers.
This one is about courage, which Powell defined not as the absence of fear, but as the willingness to act in the presence of fear. He was not advocating blind risk. You must listen to your fears. They contain valuable mitigation intelligence.
But you do not obey them.
Correct. You assess the risks realistically, you incorporate contingencies, and then you move forward toward the clear vision from Rule 11, tuning out the noise of critics who only point out problems without offering solutions.
The source notes that when you're starting challenging new projects, be it a military operation or launching a complex, innovative tech platform, the initial voices are often the naysayers.
Always. A leader has to have the fortitude to assess the risk, make the decision, and commit fully.
The 13 rules give us this amazing philosophical framework, but now we need to talk about Section 3, the weight of command. This is that moment when everything lands squarely on the leader's shoulders. This is the truth behind Harry Truman's famous desk placard. The buck stops here.
This is the critical, non-negotiable test of leadership. You can delegate authority, you can delegate tasks, but you can never, ever delegate responsibility. The leader must take ultimate, visible accountability for all decisions and all outcomes. Period.
And Powell's most public and probably most painful test of this principle involved presenting intelligence on Iraq at the UN in 2003, intelligence that later proved to be flawed.
He was criticized relentlessly for it, and that moment really defined a major chapter of his legacy.
That he didn't hide from it.
Not at all. He didn't point fingers at the intelligence agencies or his staff. He accepted full responsibility, stating publicly, "I'm the one who made the case, and I'm the one who will always be seen as having made that case." This was a clear, profoundly painful acceptance that the buck stopped with him.
It served as a professional blot, but ironically, it also solidified his personal commitment to accountability and integrity in the eyes of many.
And that moment ties directly back to the 40-70 rule we talked about. The willingness to decide with incomplete information, to take that necessary risk, is only possible if the leader is also willing to take 100% of the responsibility if that decision turns out to be wrong.
That's the cognitive dissonance leaders have to embrace.
It is. Indecision, which is often driven by the fear of blame, is often the most costly decision of all. Powell learned that indecisiveness can cost lives in combat. In business, it costs market share, relevance, and morale.
Leaders who are afraid of making mistakes often become perfectionists who avoid the necessary risks of command.
It takes genuine moral courage to put your professional reputation on the line for the mission and for your people. The source shares this powerful anecdote about a brigade commander named Butch. Powell watched this officer risk his entire career to stand up for his soldiers against bureaucratic interests. Butch put his livelihood on the line to ensure his organization was served first. That is selfless service. It's making the right call for the mission, even if it threatens your personal advancement.
And this requires a massive mental and emotional shift for technical leaders who are transitioning from being an individual contributor to being a manager. As an analyst or a senior engineer, you are largely responsible for your tasks and your code.
But as a leader, you are suddenly responsible for everything the team does or fails to do, even if the failure happened at 3 a.m. and you weren't personally involved. Powell advised embracing this shift fully. Accepting accountability is fundamentally what leadership is.
And here's the paradox. When a team knows their leader will absorb the blows and serve as a heat shield during inevitable failures, they are paradoxically freed.
Freed from the paralyzing fear of personal blame, so they can take necessary calculated risks and perform better. That confidence in their leader's support allows them to push boundaries.
Now we get to Section 4, the practical bridge. This is about taking these military command principles and applying them directly in a corporate, non-military context. How do these timeless principles actually show up in the details in a hyper-competitive environment like Silicon Valley?
The first, most foundational application is around building inclusive trust. We talk about Powell's famous parking garage story, how he took the time to go down and greet and acknowledge the parking attendants every day.
And they were external contractors, right, low on the totem pole.
Exactly. Yet he treated them with this profound, genuine respect.
I want to take that beyond just basic politeness. What is the strategic value of greeting the parking attendant?
The strategic value is that it instantly dismantles artificial hierarchies and it widens the leader's perimeter of trust. In a complex tech organization, the parking attendants are often the external vendors, the facility staffs, or junior compliance officers, people the senior leaders often forget exist.
They're invisible.
They can be. But by intentionally chatting with these members, the leader signals that everyone is a valued component of the mission. And when a crisis hits, say, a power outage or a physical security threat, you need those peripheral team members to be motivated and willing to go above and beyond for you. That trust has to be banked daily, not just withdrawn in a crisis.
That's a powerful translation. Okay, next, let's revisit decision speed in incident response. The source author physically taped the 40-70 rule to his monitor as a mantra.
In tech, decision speed is often measured in dollars and reputation. Think about a major vulnerability scenario, a zero-day threat like Log4j. The clock is ticking toward catastrophic compromise.
If you wait for 100% certainty on which systems are affected, the attack window is closed.
Long closed. You have to operate on the 40-70 rule.
So how do you measure your way into that 40% minimum? What does that look like?
You define your minimal viable decision point. So 40% in a breach scenario might be, we know the entry vector, we have a list of vulnerable services, and we know the rough containment strategy. You act decisively with that 40-70% information.
So patching what is known, isolating the highest risk systems.
Exactly. And you adjust your strategy as the forensics team pushes new data back up the chain. Waiting for that 71st percentile of data means you are likely violating your MPTR service level agreement and suffering exponentially greater losses. Powell teaches us that decisive action, even imperfect action, is preferable to comprehensive paralysis.
And that decisive action needs to come from the leader in a visible way, which leads us to the follow me ethos. Leaders must set the example and move first.
This is so critical. It's about presence and engagement. If your team is pulling an all-nighter to mitigate a network outage, the leader should be there in the trenches.
Not necessarily writing code, though.
No, that would probably hinder the team. But you function as the chief friction remover. You're fetching coffee, signing emergency spending authorizations, communicating upward to insulate the team, or physically moving roadblocks.
The leader must not hide in the ivory tower.
Absolutely not. If a new, highly inconvenient security protocol requires every employee to use a mandatory multi-factor authentication system, the CEO and the entire leadership team must adopt it first, fully and visibly, before asking the rest of the organization to comply.
You have to demonstrate that you're subject to the same standards.
And that you share the same burden. That personal ownership earns respect whether you wear a uniform or a Silicon Valley hoodie.
Finally, let's talk recognition and morale. Powell used these simple, powerful methods of writing personal notes and giving out challenge coins or tokens of excellence.
And this translates perfectly. In the corporate world, we often rely on generic emails or bonuses that can feel really detached. Powell showed the profound power of personalized recognition. Handwriting thank you notes for exceptional work, acknowledging not just the success, but the effort and the sacrifice that creates powerful memories.
Publicly celebrating team successes and giving tangible tokens like a custom challenge coin or a personalized award.
It all echoes Powell's insistence that kindness and recognition are not extraneous soft skills. They are the fuel that enables high-performance teams to sustain their effort over the long haul.
We've thoroughly covered the principles and their application, but Powell's wisdom is truly immortalized in his written works. So in Section 5, we're going to analyze the 2 key books our source recommends as a comprehensive, multi-year mentorship in print.
Let's start with My American Journey, which was published in 1995. This is the memoir detailing the formative years, the making of the leader. It traces his life from a young man in the Bronx right up to chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
The first major lesson here is this message of profound encouragement. Development, not birth. Powell was really candid about being a mediocre and unmotivated student in his early years.
Until he stumbled into the ROTC program, and that's where he found direction and passion.
This is an incredibly motivational truth for any learner. It just dismantles that myth that leaders are born fully formed.
It does. Powell shows they are developed through hard work, finding a passion, and relentless self-education. He wasn't naturally exceptional. He found his spark, the Army, and he poured himself into the discipline and the opportunity for advancement it provided, regardless of his race or background.
The book also details the famous Powell Doctrine. This is the strategic idea of using decisive, overwhelming force and having clear, achievable objectives when military action is deemed necessary.
And the translation for corporate leaders is crucial. When you commit resources, commit fully. Be absolutely clear about what success looks like, that desired end state, and throw your full, overwhelming commitment behind the mission.
No piecemeal, half-hearted approaches.
None. If you're launching a new product line, you resource it decisively, you align marketing, engineering, and sales, and you go for a swift, overwhelming market presence. Powell's recounting of the Gulf War run-up is a detailed case study in achieving strategic clarity and swift victory through decisive resourcing.
My American Journey also provides these foundational lessons in observation and integrity. The source notes Powell's humorous but deeply insightful anecdote about watching a senior colleague count hors d'oeuvre at a meeting years before.
That small observation was a keyhole into the senior colleague's character. Powell realized this person, despite his position, was focused on trivial details and resource hoarding.
And the practical point for leaders is simple. Observe and learn from every small situation.
The small things often speak volumes about a person's integrity, their focus, or the organizational culture. Leaders have to develop a peripheral vision for these human signals.
And on integrity, he modeled taking the high road, critiquing decisions without attacking characters, maintaining loyalty to the institution even when he was wronged or disagreed with the policy.
That is the foundation of long-term credibility. You can disagree strongly with a senior executive's decision, but you have to maintain professionalism and respect for the individual. Powell showed that integrity allows you to walk away from a disagreement having lost the argument but retained your character.
Okay, now let's turn to his second major book, It Worked for Me, published in 2012. If My American Journey was the story of the leader's making, this one is the direct, hands-on, candid playbook.
Yes, the rules of thumb. This book is a true collection of lessons learned in the crucible of command. One core lesson centers on responsibility for consequences, which he candidly refers to as the Pottery Barn Rule. You break it, you own it.
And this book is where he uses that frank discussion of the painful UN speech incident again, but this time he analyzes it explicitly as a universal lesson in due diligence and humility for the reader.
Absolutely. The Pottery Barn Rule translates directly into fostering a corporate culture of psychological safety. Leaders must show, through their own acceptance of mistakes, that they encourage an environment where teams can surface problems early, fix them, and learn, rather than hiding them out of fear of personal blame or reprisal.
If the team knows the leader will own the consequence, they are more willing to report the failure.
Exactly. Another crucial lesson in the playbook is about picking people for potential. Powell didn't just look for past performance, which is easy to see on a resume. He sought out potential, raw adaptability, and learning capacity, even if the individual was, a bit green.
So the leader's role shifts from manager to talent scout.
It does. Powell was willing to take a calculated risk on raw horsepower and grit over established but possibly stagnant experience. For a tech manager, that means fast-tracking a promising engineer to lead a critical project, because you see the creativity and the drive even if they lack 2 years of specific project lead experience. It's an investment in future value and adaptability.
And finally, the essential ethical framework that permeates both books, speaking truth to power.
This requires a clear, cultivated personal integrity code. Giving respectful but honest assessments is difficult, especially when the person you're advising holds enormous power over your career.
Powell insisted on delivering what the decision-maker needs to hear, not what they want to hear.
Right. He would often preface his advice with a clear signpost. Let me tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. That moral courage builds ultimate credibility. Even if your assessment is uncomfortable or leads to your advice being rejected, the ability to deliver the unvarnished truth is the most valuable asset a leader possesses.
What an immense and practical synthesis of knowledge we've distilled today. Let's review the central themes we've extracted from Powell's enduring philosophy for you, the learner. Leadership is fundamentally about character. That means rigorous ego management, relentless humility, and unwavering kindness.
It's also about mindset, adopting that powerful, action-oriented perpetual optimism and maintaining absolute composure when chaos reigns. And critically, it's about execution, having the courage to operate decisively by the 40-70 rule and a necessary discipline to check small things as signals of organizational health.
Our source encourages you to move past just reading about leadership and into actively applying it. He challenges us to adopt Powell's habit of nightly self-reflection, a continuous loop of assessment and improvement.
That simple, nightly ritual. What have we fouled up? What have we done well? What do we need to do tomorrow to take care of our people and mission? It's a comprehensive checklist for continuous growth and organizational centering, ensuring you are always aligned with your duty to your team and your mission.
And as we close this deep dive, let's leave you with one final provocative thought. It's rooted in the source author's personal journey. He noted that after fighting his way back from medical separation and doing that process of growth and re-engagement, he was finally ready to retire on his own terms after achieving command.
That ultimate lesson is adaptability, the continuous shedding of old roles.
So for you, the listener, the challenge is this. Powell taught that your position is not your identity. Where in your professional life is your ego currently attached to an old role, a previous title, or a past identity that you are not ready to let fall?
What opportunities, what decisive 40-70 decisions might you be missing because you are leading based on who you were instead of embracing who you could be? This continuous process of self-assessment and growth is the most profound lesson that leaders like Colin Powell modeled until his final days.
We hope these insights inspire you to go forth and lead with integrity, courage, and that indispensable perpetual optimism. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Please let us know what are your 2 to 3 takeaway from this episode. Uh, like I've said earlier, I've really learned a lot from General Colin Powell. Has been a great inspiration in my life, and I don't know how many times, even in my own Navy career, I felt like, oh, maybe I need to quit and I need to give up now. But knowing that Powell went all the way up to being a 4-star general, that really has inspired me a lot. And one thing I have also really noticed throughout my entire career, all of the flag officer I have ever worked for, all of the general and admiral, one thing they really truly have in common is their humility, servant leadership, always putting everybody else in front of them. Maybe that's one of the characteristics why you become a flag officer, whether you are selected or not. But pretty much, all of them, they have done so much, they have accomplished so much, but they are so humble. And that is really characteristic of them. And it is quite amazing to see. And I've also had the privilege of not just working for some of them, but actually interviewing some of the best that I believe America has ever produced, right? Like the legendary General David Petraeus, or General Glenn D. Van Erck, or more recently, last week I had really the great privilege and honor to speak with General Stanley McChrystal. One thing they all have in common: they are humble, they are down to earth, and they just want to add value. And that's really a lesson I will take to my grave. If you want to lead, if you want to be the boss, you really have to add value to others. You have to serve the people who are under you. I am looking for this book again, Gets Off Fire. I want to really encourage you guys to get a copy by Stephen Pressfield. I think it really truly has the best definition of leadership, what leadership is. And I think, again, this is one thing I have seen exemplify, model by all of the flag officers I've really ever had the privilege and the honor of serving under. On page 412, it says, I will tell His Majesty what a king is. So if you want to be a king, you want to be a leader, this is who you should aspire to be. A king does not abide within his tent while his men bleed and die upon the field. A king does not dine while his men go hungry, nor sleep when they stand at watch upon the wall. A king does not command his men's loyalty for fear, nor purchase it with gold. He earns their love by the sweat of his own back and the pains he endures for their sake. That which comprises the harshest burden, a king lifts first and sets down last. A king does not require service of those he leads, but provides it to them. He serves them, not they him. That is the meaning of leadership. Wow. All right. So that's it for now. And tomorrow, I will have a great pleasure of having a leadership conversation with my old professor. That's going to be Dr. Casey Lucius, PhD. She's a scholar, practitioner, servant leader, executive. We're going to be talking about full circle leadership conversation because I've learned a lot of leadership lesson in her class back in 2011. I think it was at the Naval War College in Monterey at the Naval Postgraduate School. And she's going to be here. We're going to be talking about leadership some more. So especially for my junior officer, pay close attention. And then this Friday, I will have the honor of speaking with Diana Ramesh. She made a surprise feature yesterday on the podcast just to say hello. She's a cybersecurity executive, founder, operator, and a mentor. We're going to be talking about cybersecurity is existential. So that's going to be this Friday. And then let's see, next week I will have, let me make sure. Yeah, I will have Captain Tess Tracy, PsyD, U.S. Army. She's a transformational leader, operational psychologist, and we're going to be talking about the psychology of command. And then after her, I will have a great pleasure of speaking to the one and only Dr. Shauna Doug Springer, PhD. She's relentless, and she's perceptive. We're going to be talking about mental warfare and moral courage. She's a serial best-selling author of Beyond the Military Warrior and Relentless Courage, which, if you remember, I already had an interview with Michael Segru, who is a co-author during our first mental health day. So that's what's coming down the pipe. And thank you so much for watching. And I can't wait to be here with you again tomorrow. Have a wonderful holiday. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Coach Busy. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership and Success Podcast with your host, Coach BZ. If today's episode added value to your leadership journey, be sure to subscribe, share, and join us again for more wisdom nuggets on how to lead better and achieve greater success. Remember, leadership is the most critical skill of our time. The world will always need leaders to inspire others, drive innovation, and execute meaningful strategy. So why not count yourself among the bold leaders shaping the 21st century? Until next time, stay inspired, stay committed, and keep leading with excellence.